Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Salebox for the games that were released on the 27th of December 2011 in the Steam sale. It's been a few days since the last Salebox. I did say I probably wouldn't be able to do it every day, and that was the case, especially over the Christmas period. Sort of back on schedule, trying to take it fairly easy up until the new year, but I think you guys should probably get some information on today's sales, and I'll try and keep this back on schedule, if at all possible, until the end of the grand Steam sale. So, let's talk games, shall we? This is day 9 of the Steam holiday sale, and I'd like to thank LTX for his excellent table and roundup that he posts every day on Reddit. It's very, very helpful indeed, and we'll be using it to assist in this particular venture. These games will be available until 10 PM GMT due to the way that the rollover system now works, so you do have plenty of time to pick up these titles. Alright, let's kick it off, shall we? So the first game that we're going to look at will be the Dawn of War 2 Complete Pack. That is 66% off in total, which is $20.39, €13.58, £16.99 or 33 Aussie dollars 99. So the Australians do get a little bit screwed on that one, unfortunately. This complete pack includes Dawn of War 2, Chaos Rising, and Retribution. Unfortunately, it does not contain all of the DLC. Admittedly, the DLC is cosmetic, it is effectively useless, but it would have been nice for them to at least have thrown in a little bit there, and they didn't do that, so I can't say that I'm particularly impressed by that. But the pack itself is definitely worth having if you're looking for something a bit different in your RTS. And honestly, I played these games primarily as single-player titles. I did play some of the multiplayer, and I enjoyed it. It's quite simplistic, but it's very much squad tactics and map control, which may interest some of you. It's not particularly macro intensive, let me put it that way. So if you're looking for a game that is not based around carefully managing your economy, then Dawn of War 2 should be right up your alley in terms of multiplayer. The single player is what really interests me because it's squad-based tactics with persistent squads that level up and you can gain abilities for them and you can equip them with different pieces of war gear that you find as you go through the game. The boss fights can be a little bit frustrating because they're very, very grindy in places and they can really drag on for a while, but I absolutely enjoyed all of the single-player campaigns from all three of these. Chaos Rising, I think, was the best in that respect. Retribution allows you to play all 6 races, although the campaigns aren't quite as good and as polished as they were in the original game and its expansion. There is an awful lot of game here. There really, really is. It is a very well put-together title. It's got some very explosive combat, a little bit random in places, but it's definitely nicely themed to the 40k universe, and it's got a reasonable amount of racial diversity. It's always nice, of course, to see a RTS that is also focused around melee combat as much as it is around ranged, and the use of various hero-based abilities and equipment-based stuff. It's got quite a bit of customization, and so Dawn of War 2 is certainly worth having a look at. If you don't want to pick up the complete pack, for the best variety, I would recommend just grabbing Retribution, because Retribution has 6 campaigns in it and includes 6 races. The original Dawn of War 2 probably has a better campaign overall, but you do only get to play Space Marines, so it depends really what you're after. If you want a good Space Marine campaign, play the original and, of course, the expansion. If you're looking for a campaign that is, of course, not Space Marine, then Retribution is the only place to go for that. Alright, and also Warhammer 40,000 games are available if you want to have a look at the older version of Dawn of War. And to be honest, I did love the original Dawn of War. Dawn of War Gold Edition is more like a traditional RTS, and if you're looking for something that's 40k based but has a lot of base building in it, which Dawn of War 2 does not, they get rid of that, then Dawn of War Gold Edition should be right up your alley. Dark Crusade's a little bit imbalanced and includes 2 extra races, the Necrons and the Tau. Soulstorm is an absolute joke and you should avoid it like the plague. There is nothing redeeming about Soulstorm. It is highly imbalanced and it has terrible voice acting, story and campaign. And if you are a 40k nut like me, you will go crazy at some of the errors they've made in terms of the canon. Losing 1,000 Bane Blades would be a prime example. Dear God. But if you don't have the PC that can support Dawn of War 2, then certainly the original Dawn of War for that price at 66% off. Dawn of War Gold is worth having. I'd personally avoid the expansions, however. Alright, Stronghold 3, 33% off. That's $34, €34, £20 or 34 Aussie dollars. So the Europeans get screwed over the most here. This is one of the avoid like the plague games that come up every now and again because I love Stronghold to death. I think the series is awesome. My favorite Stronghold was Stronghold Crusader. That was absolutely fantastic. The problem is that every 3D Stronghold game, from Stronghold 2 through Stronghold Legends, all the way to this one, has been fairly terrible. And Stronghold 3 is also very bad indeed. It is buggy as hell, it is badly balanced, it lacks all the character from the isometric titles. It's a joke. It's a bunch of tedious micromanagement with horrific bugs. The multiplayer is completely broken. When this game gets fixed, and I do mean majorly fixed, it might be worth having, but aside from that, please do not. If you're looking for a Stronghold game, then head over to GOG and buy Stronghold Crusader, which is the best of the series by far. You could also pick up the Stronghold Collection from Steam, which is 50% off at the moment. It's not on the daily sale, but it's $10, £7 or €10, and it features Stronghold, Stronghold Crusader, and Stronghold Crusader Extreme, as well as the two bad games 2 and Legends. Extreme is the same as Stronghold Crusader, but it allows for larger armies and it has a few new buildings and missions, so that's like the definitive game that you can pick up there. Honestly, I just avoid Steam entirely when it comes to Stronghold and head over to GOG, who are also having a holiday sale at the moment, because Stronghold Crusader is $5. So that's really the only game you need to play in the series, if I'm totally honest. It's better than the rest. So have a go at that one, because it is a really great castle sim, and it's got some excellent siege warfare going on. But Stronghold 3 is, once again, yet another goddamn disaster in the series that will probably never get going again at this rate. It's so sad to see, because I do love it dearly. Here's another one that I don't like the look of when it comes to a classic series gone awry. It's Disciples 3. Disciples 3 Renaissance Steam Special Edition and Disciples 3 Resurrection. Resurrection is the newer one. Resurrection's basically an expansion that fixes some of the problems with Renaissance, but it still isn't very good. Renaissance has terrible AI, bad unit balance, and incredibly repetitive combat. It lacks any semblance of style or substance. It is really awful, which is unfortunate because it is quite cheap as well. It's $5, €5 or £3.74, as well as $5 Aussie dollars. Resurrection goes for $7.50, €7.50, £7.50, so the UK guys get screwed over the most here, and $7 Aussie dollars 50. These games simply do not capture the feel of the original, and Disciples 2 is probably the best in the series in my honest opinion, which, funnily enough, is also available over on GOG. It's in their holiday sale as well at 50% off. Disciples 2 Gold, which is the best of the lot as far as I'm concerned, and has pretty much all the expansions in it, and that's $5. So if you're looking for something it's kind of Heroes of Might and Magic style, with some more interesting 3D tactical battles going on and some more RPG elements, then you may want to try out Disciples 2. Again, that is quite an old game. That was out in 2005. But Disciples 3 simply is not worth playing, in my honest opinion. Also, if you're looking for a Heroes of Might and Magic style turn-based game, certainly have a look at the King's Bounty titles. They've been previously on sale. They may come up again in the sale roundup at some point. But yeah, King's Bounty and Armored Princess are both absolutely fantastic games. Okay, lots of Star Wars games. Lots and lots of Star Wars games, and massive discounts as well, 75% off. I'm not going to bother going through all of the titles simply because there are too many, but I'll tell you which ones that are definitely worth having. My pick of the litter would have to be Knights of the Old Republic and Republic Commando. Both of those are really cheap. Republic Commando, some of you may not know about. It is absolutely fantastic. It's like if you took Rainbow Six Vegas and put it in the Star Wars universe, only made it better than Rainbow Six Vegas. Republic Commando is an awesome shooter, and it's a real shame that they haven't come up with a follow-up. It's squad-based, it's a little bit tactical, it's got a nice theme going on with it, it sticks very true to the Star Wars universe, and it's pretty much one of, if not the best game, based in the Clone War style era. We can have a look at some of the other titles. Empire at War, this was a bit hit and miss. I mean, the space combat is really cool in this game, and the campaigns are pretty awesome. It's kind of like a 4X strategy light in terms of you move from planet to planet, you do research and things like that, and you build up armies. As I say, the fleet battles were awesome. I really, really liked the fleet battles in that. They weren't homeworld style, they were on a 2D plane, but there was still a lot of fun to do. The ground combat is fairly laborious and pretty repetitive, and the problem with ground combat is that whenever you actually invade an enemy planet, you're going to be going up against constantly respawning troops until you blow up the buildings that they pop out of. It is a grindy grind, and I absolutely despise the ground combat in that game. Funnily enough, it's kind of like Star Trek Online. The space combat is really awesome, and the ground combat is abysmal. Yeah, it's unfortunate because, like I said, the game is pretty good, and if you're looking for an RTS, then you may want to pick it up just for the skirmish mode and the multiplayer. There are some reasonable mods available for this game as well, but like I said, the ground combat is not so good in this game. Aside from that, Battlefront 2, great multiplayer title if you can still find people that actually play it, and not an expensive game either. You can pick up the Star Wars package, but it's not particularly good value. And then the last pack that's in that is the Jedi Knight collection. Some amazing games in here, really, really awesome. Admittedly, Dark Forces, you may have issues running on a modern system. It's worth it just for Jedi Outcast and Jedi Academy. Although Dark Forces 2, of course, Jedi Knight and Mysteries of the Sith, again, if you can get them running properly, are really amazing games. They're just a little bit dated at the moment. I think Jedi Outcast is certainly the best of the selection there, and if you want something that's got some genuine lightsaber combat going on, Jedi Knight 2 does it really, really well. The Gothic Complete Pack, 75% off. That's $12.49, €12.49, £9.99, or 12 Aussie dollars 49. Best game in that pack is Gothic 2. And honestly, that would be the only one that I'd bother with. Arcania is okay. It's not terrible. Gothic 2 is easily the best of the bunch. Gothic 3's got some pretty serious balance issues. Admittedly, they were buffed out by a lot of community efforts, but still, I'd say Gothic 2 is the best of the lot, and it's a good price for it. Gothic 4 is not a terrible game. It's got some fairly simplistic combat and some pretty dumb AI. And honestly, I would have been looking more into Risen, and a lot of people say, oh, well, Risen's bad. It's like, well, you probably watched a review of the 360 version, which definitely was. The PC version is not. So, I don't know, I'd probably skip the bundle, honestly, and just pick up Gothic 2. Again, a bit dated, but a very, very solid role-playing game indeed. Sequence, 75% off. That's $1.24, 99 euro cents, 99 pence, or $1 Aussie dollar 24. This is a must-buy, in my opinion, for that price. It is a mixture of a rhythm game with an RPG. It's got some great writing, some genuinely funny writing, and some very odd moments. It's also got some amazing music. Ronnie Jenkins did a lot of the music for this game, and you might be aware of him. He got some YouTube fame several years ago. It's got some of my favorite tracks in there, including Stay Crunchy. I would, without question, recommend this title for that price. It's an amazing game. And it's pretty damn challenging at the highest levels as well, I've got to say. So, yeah, Sequence is a no-brainer for that price. Terraria, 75% off. Also, in my opinion, a no-brainer for that price. That's $2.50, €2.50, £1.50, or 2 Aussie dollars 50. Do I need to tell you about Terraria? Really? What I will say, just to clean up some of the misconceptions, is this is not Minecraft. It really, really isn't. It is a Metroidvania-style platformer with some building elements in it. It's an RPG in the sense that you progress through various levels of equipment. There are RPG-style random stat generation, and it's in a procedurally generated world, which I might point out is extremely hard to say. It is good. Very, very good. Highly recommend it. It's even okay to play single player, although playing with your friends is much, much better. Absolutely recommend Terraria, without a moment's hesitation. Cities in Motion, 75% off. That's $5, €5, £3.74, or 5 Aussie dollars. It's certainly not a bad game. I was hoping for something more like OpenTTD, if I'm honest. That's Transport Tycoon Deluxe, which is free, so that's something to consider. Cities in Motion is a fairly reasonable but somewhat dry economic simulation. If you are looking for something along those lines where you manage a transport company, it does most things right. It just doesn't do anything amazingly well. That's the concern that I've got with it. The collection is this plus a bunch of DLC, which is certainly worth looking at. It's not the most impressive game ever. Personally, I didn't enjoy it all that much. But if you are the kind of person that is looking for a city management game, you're not going to find a huge number of those these days, and Cities in Motion certainly isn't a bad one. It's just, like quite a few Paradox games, it's just a little bit dry in places. It lacks the spark, which makes it really interesting, like, say, OpenTTD with its great music, graphic style, and a few off-the-wall elements there. Cities in Motion's just more of a serious sim, and it's not bad, it's just not my kind of game. Solar 2, 75% off. That's $2.50, €1.74, £1.74, or $2 Aussie 50. Solar 2, I did give a fairly good first impressions of. It's not a very long game. It's a few hours worth of gameplay, which is why for that price it's really reasonable. I think for the price that they gave in the first place, probably not so much, but it does still have an active development team going on with it, and it's got a fairly off-the-wall sense of humor. The game itself is based around you growing into various things. You start off as a rock, and then you can become a planet. You can get life on your planet. You can then defend your planet by flying your planet around the place. You can do missions. It's very, very odd. I don't think it's very common to find a game where you can play as a rock or a star, and you can do that in this particular game. So it certainly might be worth looking into, and there is a demo available for that game as well. Call of Duty Black Ops, 50% off. That's $30, €30, so the Europeans get screwed over hard on that one. 20 quid or 45 Aussie dollars. So Australians not doing so well either. I wouldn't bother, honestly. Black Ops is not a particularly good game. It never really has been. It has always had problems, and while it does have dedicated servers, which comes up in its favor, if you're gonna play a Call of Duty game in multiplayer, then for God's sake, just go and play the original Modern Warfare, because it's easily the best one. Buying these older Call of Duty titles is like buying a previous year's FIFA. You just don't do it. These are annual releases. People move on from one game to the next, and honestly, I wouldn't even bother. Fear Collection, 50% off. That is $25, €25, £20, or 25 Aussie dollars. As regards to the Fear games, the first one is easily the best, in my honest opinion, and also happens to be the cheapest. As regards to the DLC for Fear, the Extraction Point DLC is really good. Perseus Mandate, not so much. Fear 2 was not as good as the original Fear, and the DLC Reborn is about 50 minutes long for that game. It's absolutely atrocious. And Fear 3 is the latest one. It's got more of a co-op focused style to it, which makes it a little bit unusual considering the previous Fear games were very much single player. It's okay in places. It's got a fairly original set of multiplayer modes in there, but the best game is still the original Fear. As an FPS, Fear is peerless in terms of games that are going to scare the living crap out of you. Unfortunately, multiplayer for Fear, which was actually pretty cool, is not available anymore, so that's kind of sad. I rather enjoyed the Fear, original Fear anyway, multiplayer. But yeah, have a look at Fear and Extraction Point. Very, very cheap. And if you enjoyed that, then try Fear 2 Project Origin. Again, it's not a terrible game. It's just not as good as the original. And Fear 3 is some weird co-op stuff. And I haven't really played it enough to give you a affirmative judgment on it. But what I did play of it was kind of entertaining. Alright, and last but by no means least, Prince of Persia games. All of them 75% off. That varies between $3 and $8 each, really, for these. Now, the ones that are worth picking up, as far as I'm concerned, Sands of Time, Sands of Time, Sands of Time, and a bit more Sands of Time. The Prince of Persia remake that came out in 2008, avoid like the plague. It's barely even a game. That game doesn't even let you lose. It's laborious. The combat is boring as hell. It's got a great graphic style, but the actual game is dull as sin, as far as I'm concerned. Warrior Within is a really good game in terms of its combat, but it does get somewhat emo and the music is fairly atrocious, but still Warrior Within is actually a good game in my honest opinion. Two Thrones, not too bad, although the PC port is somewhat ropey in places, and The Forgotten Sands is the latest one. Once again, it's not a bad game, it's just not as good as Sands of Time. Unfortunately, that applies to pretty much all of them, as far as I'm concerned. I think the only weakness that Sands of Time really had was the fact that the combat wasn't as good as Warrior Within and Two Thrones, but it's a good set of 3D platformers, with the exception of the 2008 Prince of Persia, and it's worth investigating if you haven't looked at these games before. You will not find all that many acrobatic games that are based on platforming precision these days, and when it comes to Prince of Persia, that's pretty much all the game is, with some combat put in between for good measure. Personally, I don't like them. You want to know why? Because I'm terrible at platformers, simple as that. But Sands of Time is universally acclaimed for a very, very good reason indeed. It was well reviewed, and it stands up very well to this day. So even if you only pick up one of these games, have a look at Sands of Time. Alright folks, that's me done for today's Salebox. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.